Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving you the summary of the novel titled The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. The Namesake is the story of two generations of the Ganguly family, a family of Indian immigrants to the United States. When we first meet Ashok and Ashima Ganguly, they are living in a small apartment in Cambridge, Massachusetts, about to welcome their first child into the world. The young couple has had an arranged marriage in Calcutta, India, where Ashima has lived her whole life before leaving it to accompany Ashok as he was studying engineering at MIT at that point of time. Ashok has been set on traveling abroad ever since a terrible train accident a few years ago in Calcutta, from which he had barely survived. He was discovered by the rescue people because of the glowing pages of the book he had been reading on the train just before the train had derailed, and that book was a copy of the collected stories of Nikolai Gogol, the renowned Russian author. For Ashima, however, the journey abroad has proven to be very difficult. She feels lonely and homesick in America, clinging to letters from her family back in India and devising makeshift Indian recipes with the ingredients she can find locally. Soon their son is born in the foreign environment of the American hospital. Ashok reflects on how lucky his son is when the baby receives the present of a book from a Bengali friend. He also wonders about his son's life, as it is going to be very different from what his life had been as a child. Ashima too is struck by how different her son's life will be, but she feels pity for him because he will grow up alone without the extended family that was so central to her own development. The couple waits for their son's good name to come in a letter from Ashima's grandmother, who is in India. But in the meantime, they must give the hospital a temporary pet name to be put on the birth certificate before Ashima is discharged from the hospital with the baby. And so they settle on the name Gogol, which was inspired from the name of Ashok's favorite writer, Nikolai Gogol. And also, since Nikolai Gogol's book had been very instrumental in saving Ashok's life during the train accident. The novel then tracks Gogol's growth as the family moves into a small suburban town when Ashok is hired as an assistant professor at the local university. Gogol becomes central to his mother's life, filling some of the loneliness she feels because she's away from her homeland. When he begins kindergarten school, his parents decide that his good name will be Nikhil. As Ashima's grandmother's letter with a selected name by her for her grandson never reaches the Gangulys since it is lost in the mail. However, in spite of the name Nikhil given to Gogol as the good name in the kindergarten school, the child does not respond to the name Nikhil and Whenever the teachers call him out by the name Gogol, he responds to them. So it is decided that he will be called and addressed by the name Gogol. So Nikhil continues to be known and called as Gogol, and the name Gogol also ends up to become his official name in the passport, since his grandfather, that is Ashima's father, expires back in India, and they receive a call from Ashima's brother Rana for that. So the Gangulis have to fly to India on that account. Later in the novel, Sonali is born. Sonali is also known as Sonia in the novel, and she is the younger sister of Gogol. As the novel progresses, we see that the two siblings, Gogol and Sonali, begin to bond as the carriers of American influence in the house. The two children, with their natural unaccented English and socialization in the American school system, are the reason for Ashok and Ashima's adoption of Christmas and of certain American food items. At the same time, Ashok and Ashima take their children to regular gatherings of their Bengali friends in America, and the family takes extended trips to Calcutta, at one point living with relatives for an 8-month period. During this trip, Sonia and Gogol feel like outsiders. They cannot relate to the culture of India or to anything that they see around them. India is a foreign place to them, even as they see their parents' joy at being home. Gogol grows to despise his name and is deeply embarrassed by his namesake, the author Nikolai Gogol, and by the fact that the name is not linked to any part of his identity. He does not yet know the story of his father's train accident. When he is 18, he decides to legally change his name to Nikhil, and when he leaves home for Yale, this is the name that will follow him. It is as Nikhil that he meets his first love, Ruth, an English major who never meets his parents because he feels embarrassed to make Ruth introduced to his parents because of the cultural differences. Although their relationship is for more than 2 years, they break up after Ruth spends a semester and then a summer abroad in England. Nikhil's escape from the world of Gogol is still incomplete, though, as every other weekend, he travels home, where his family stubbornly persists in calling him by his pet name. Ironically, he does not understand the emotional aspect related to a pet name in the context of the Indian culture. The escape is pushed one step further when, living in New York after having finished an architecture degree at Columbia, Gogol falls in love with a sophisticated young art historian named Maxine Ratliff, who lives with her elegant and wealthy parents, Gerard and Lydia. Gogol moves into their house, which becomes almost a replacement for his own home. He is fascinated by the Radcliffes, whose vacation home in New Hampshire, with its own family graveyard, is emblematic of the ease, security, and solidity he has never felt growing up divided between the two cultures of India and America. However, his escapade with Maxine's family is cut short when his father dies unexpectedly of a heart attack. Ashok had been living in Ohio on a teaching fellowship and so was away from Ashima at that time. Struck by the tragedy of this loss, Gogol returns to his family, finding comfort in the Bengali traditions he had once rebelled against. He drifts away from Maxine, who was never a part of that world, and the two stop seeing one another. Later, returning to New York, he goes on a date suggested by his mother with one of the other Bengali girls who was present at the many gatherings of his childhood, and her name is Moshmi Mazumdar. The two hit it off, surprised at the ways in which their familiarity and similar backgrounds draw them together, since both have tried hard to distance themselves from their past. Soon enough, they are married at a large Bengali ceremony in New Jersey. Although they are happy enough at first, soon small remembrances of Moshmi's past with her ex-fiancé Graham begin to trouble their relationship. Moshmi, a French PhD candidate at New York University, has always sought independence and cannot help but feel that marrying Gogol was in some way unsettling for her. In the end, she has an affair with an old crush, Dimitri Desjardins, and she and Gogol are divorced. In the novel's last chapter, we see the family coming together again. Sonia, accompanied by her new fiancé Ben, to celebrate one final Bengali Christmas Eve in their home, which has been sold. Ashima has decided to live for 6 months of every year in Calcutta. Reflective and sad that this link to his past is evaporating, Gogol finds a book in his room, a copy of the collected stories of Nikolai Gogol that his father had given him as a birthday present years before, when all Gogol had wanted was to escape that name. Now that there will soon be no one left to call him by it, he feels a desire to reach out towards his past once more, and he sits down on his childhood bed to read his father's favorite story.